So that's my guess, that there is talk that Diddy's lawyers have brought it to the White House and that they're the ones who gave Deadline the quote, Trump is seriously considering a pardon for Sean Combs. I don't know whether Trump actually is, but I'm here to urge him not to even consider it.
All right, folks. So Megyn Kelly and other right-wing commentators are publicly panicking because it's being reported that Donald Trump is considering pardoning Sean P. Diddy Combs after his multiple convictions. And we have to talk about it. And in particular, we have to talk about how Megyn Kelly is trying to pitch this to Trump, because it reveals everything about Trump and, quite frankly, even MAGA influencers like Kelly herself. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to continue. Actually, listen, before we jump back into the rest of this clip where she lays out her case as to why Trump should not pardon Diddy, and I agree, he should not pardon Diddy, let's look at the reporting on it. So again, turn to Mediaite. Trump seriously considering a pardon for Diddy report. Donald Trump is reportedly considering a pardon of Sean Diddy Combs after he was found guilty of prostitution charges. Earlier this month, a jury found Combs guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Perhaps more importantly, he was found not guilty of the most serious charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. Due to the fact that he likely avoided a lengthy prison sentence, the verdict was considered a major win for the defense. Now, Combs' team reportedly wants Trump to do away with those lesser charges as well. According to a Tuesday report from Deadline, sources from within the administration said Trump has given serious thought to pardoning the music mogul. This is an excerpt from the report. Quote, nearly 2 months after Trump publicly entertained the notion of a Diddy pardon in an Oval Office gaggle, a comprehensive get-out-of-jail card for Combs is being, quote, seriously considered, an administration source tells Deadline. Additionally, as several associates of the much-accused and currently incarcerated All About the Benjamins performer have been pitching the White House, other insiders confirmed the topic leveled up from, quote, just another Trump weave to an actionable event, since Combs was found partially guilty in his New York City sex trafficking trial earlier this month. Of course, as a number of parties attest, this being the roller coaster of Trump world, any decision on a Combs pardon is in flux until POTUS actually puts his signature on paper. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's go back to Megyn Kelly, who is trying to make her case to Trump via her wildly successful and infuriating channel for Trump not to do that.
And much less to do it. It would be an absolute disaster. It would be a miscarriage of justice. He doesn't deserve it. Okay, first of all, just to put it in terms Trump can understand, Diddy can't stand you, Mr. President. He was once nice to you, he's turned on you, and he doesn't deserve a favor from you, who he worked actively to stop in 2020. Here's a clip from Charlemagne on his show going over some of that. Watch.
So before we continue, I just want you to please, please, please note the phrasing there. To put it in terms Trump can understand, he's been mean to you. Diddy doesn't deserve a pardon because he's been mean to you. To put it in terms Trump understands, let that phrase just keep rotating and bouncing off the walls of your cranium. It's important.
White men like Trump need to be banished. That way of thinking is real dangerous. When you look at it, we don't have no choice. You know what I'm saying? You can say what you want about Biden. I can't say I love the pick either, but hey, we got to get him in office, and then we got to hold him accountable.
Okay, so that was Diddy giving Charlemagne an interview, making clear how anti-Trump he was. And
to put it in terms Trump can understand, and you lead with, he's anti-Trump, he opposed you in a previous election. That's why he doesn't deserve a pardon. But she adds more.
And on top of that, and more importantly, he is a serial woman abuser, the likes of which we haven't seen in modern America, at least not on the public stage in this way. He is a repeated serial abuser. He beat those women to a pulp and didn't even deny it. He didn't deny it. They admitted expressly domestic abuse over and over and over again, something the judge used against them when they pled for bail, when they said, please let him stay out on bail pending sentencing. So he doesn't deserve any sort of a pardon. He got away with all of that. He's only being sentenced when he gets sentenced on these minor crimes of, basically engaging in prostitution and transporting people for the purpose of it. So he got away with the most serious crimes. And so two things. Number one, what's Trump in trouble over when it comes to Epstein? He's in trouble because he is making it look like to the MAGA base, he's part of the elite cabal that covers for other members of the elite cabal. And they don't like that. They elected Trump because he promised not to be one of them, but to like bust up those groups and work with the people against them. So this would not help, not at all. And there are a lot of people like Viva Frei, who comes on the show as a legal commentator a lot, who already thinks the whole Diddy trial was just a show trial so that, you know, he could be found guilty on a couple of minor things. But the real meat of the Diddy case, which is how many other people were being provided access to young women and others and drugs at these parties of note, you know, like famous celebrities, and somehow that's been kept up. So like there's already people thinking that there's a cover up here. Trump pardoning Diddy will create another Epstein for him. It would be a nightmare. And last and certainly not least, the GOP is already struggling with female voters, and they're not all lefties. There are young conservative women who aren't in love with Trump or MAGA. There are. And this will not help.
So there you have it. Okay. Now, if you're still thinking about that phrase, to put it in terms Trump can understand, she leads with the fact that Trump was mean, or Trump didn't like, or excuse me, that Diddy did not like Donald Trump. Now, she repeats this on Twitter. Trump should not pardon Diddy. He doesn't deserve it. He's a Trump hater. Then he's a woman abuser. MAGA is already upset over elites seeming to cover for each other. This would not help. GOP is struggling with young female voters, most of whom will hate a Diddy pardon. Now, I think all of that's true, actually. Given the evidence against Diddy, even though he was found not guilty on the major charges, I don't think it would be good for justice or for Trump politically to pardon Diddy. Of course, I want Donald Trump to suffer politically, so there's that. But I think everything else, yes, the GOP struggles with women. Yes, MAGA is already in the midst of a civil war, and during the prosecution of Diddy, there were so many parallels in terms of the commentary to the Epstein debacle. So there's nothing here that Megyn Kelly says it's wrong, except for the fact that she's focusing on the fact that Diddy once criticized 5 or 6 years ago Donald Trump. And for her to say, I'm going to put it in terms that Trump understands, Diddy doesn't like you, instead of, I'm going to put it in terms Trump understands, Diddy has been credibly accused and admitted to doing terrible things to women, even if he was found not guilty on the major charges. She doesn't lead with that. And the reason she doesn't lead with that is because Megyn Kelly knows that Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about that. Now, she would pretend, she would protest, she would clutch her pearls. No, of course he cares. Donald Trump has been credibly accused of sexual assault and misconduct by multiple women. He was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation of E. Jean Carroll, for digitally penetrating her in a Bergdorf Goodman in the 90s. The presiding judge in that case clarified that what Trump did to Carroll, according to the jury, would be considered rape in the common parlance, just not to the satisfaction of a New York criminal standard, because, again, not to get too graphic, but in order to do it at the criminal level, in order to be criminally convicted of that sort of thing, you have to use your genitals, and Trump, according to the jury, only used his fingers. But in the common parlance, that would be considered rape. Trump doesn't give a shit about women. He obviously doesn't. And Megyn Kelly told on herself there. She told on herself. By phrasing it this way in both the written text and on screen, I'm going to put it in terms Trump understands. I have to choose between trying to persuade Trump this guy has done terrible things to women, or he's criticized you. I'm going to lead with he's criticized you. That's what's really going to, that has the strongest possible chance of turning Trump off from a pardon. And again, I point out that it's strange that you list Trump hater before woman abuser. Yes, I'm sorry. I think that is a massive tacit admission by Megyn Kelly that her preferred political candidate doesn't give a fuck about women and has abused women. We know he was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation, has been credibly accused of things that are as bad or worse by dozens of others. And Megyn Kelly knows that because she doesn't lead with it. And she's explicitly not leading with it because she thinks the most persuasive case to make to Trump to avoid him pardoning Diddy is by saying he criticized you in the past. What that says about Trump, what that says about Megyn Kelly, knowing that that's what it says about Trump, and she enthusiastically supports this prick anyway, is staggering. She told on him, she told on herself. So, just shocking. Now, I will also point out that, well, I've already said it, that all the other stuff about how this would only exacerbate the civil war within MAGA over the Epstein thing, and that it would further erode the GOP's support for women, all of that is true. Again, she told on herself, she told on Trump. There's a good article by Colby Hall, who has been, he's been on Megyn's ass, and understandably so. Like, he's criticized her a lot on the Mediaite YouTube page, and I think, again, for good reason. And he wrote this really interesting op-ed. Megyn Kelly is the new Rush Limbaugh and prototype for the future of political media. During Monday's SiriusXM show, Megyn Kelly gave a shout-out to a column I'd written, which I'd immediately learned from my friend, from my phone lighting up with texts from college friends in Kansas. This has happened before, but usually when she's mocking me. This time, however, she praised my piece about media overreaction to Trump's tariffs and panic about empty shelves that never quite arrive. One Fred wrote, quote, "I like her. She fills my Rush void. Yes, I have good friends who were giant, quote, ditto heads, but I got that text on the subway on my way to have a lunch with a former colleague of Kelly's who was decidedly not a fan. I mentioned the exchange, casually tossing it out as a column idea, and well, here we are. When Rush Limbaugh died in 2021, conservative media lost more than a talk radio icon. It lost its emotional narrator, the singular voice who interpreted the world for millions of listeners, distilling outrage into punchlines and partisanship and identity. In the years since, no one has truly filled his shoes, but Megyn Kelly has come the closest. She doesn't have the cartoonish bombast or the AM radio nostalgia, but she has built something just as potent. A smarter than you'd expect, snarky, self-produced daily show that combines cultural content, media skepticism, and a reliable dose of red meat, with a polish few in the space can match. The Megyn Kelly Show draws over 1 million podcast downloads a week, 3.7 million from YouTube subscribers, 3.7 million YouTube subscribers, and generates an estimated $25 million annually. It's a lean, nimble machine that's become required daily listening for millions of conservatives, especially those craving something smarter than partisan screaming. Credit goes not just to Kelly's instincts, but to executive producer Steve Krakauer, a veteran media hand and Mediaite alum, whose editorial hand helped shape the show's rhythm and sharp edge. Their combined sensibility, irreverent, anti-elite, legally precise, has filled the exact space Limbaugh once owned, not just conservative talk, but conservative identity. But let's be clear. Kelly has also inherited some of Limbaugh's rougher traits, particularly when it comes to trans issues. Her rhetoric around gender identity isn't just strident, it's confrontational, and aimed at intentionally angering people she knows will be offended. She regularly misgenders trans guests and frames trans existence itself as a threat to truth or womanhood, reducing complex issues to ideological clickbait. To many, it feels like legitimate debate and more like open hostility, less like legitimate debate and more like open hostility. But that's the point, and it rates. This isn't a side note, it's central to her brand. Just as Limbaugh once joked about AIDS victims and mocked feminazis to wild applause, Kelly now uses the culture war around gender as both a punchline and a battering ram. It's the same formula. Provoke outrage, ride the backlash, convert it into brand loyalty, and it works. Yet what makes Kelly different and more complicated is her willingness to also occasionally aim fire at her own side. And I've said this before. So what's interesting about Megyn Kelly, she is smart and she's damn good at her job. And that makes her infuriating as a political opponent or a media opponent. And she has repeatedly criticized Donald Trump. She's doing it right here when she's like, hey, listen, you're about to fuck up spectacularly. Very few in MAGA media would put it the way Megyn Kelly sometimes does with Trump. Her skepticism of Trump's role in burying the Epstein files was one of her most striking recent moves. While most conservative influencers fell in line with Trump's bizarre demand to, quote, stop talking about Epstein, Kelly not only refused, she mocked Trump's most loyal toady, Charlie Kirk, for following his orders. She called out Pam Bondi by name, questioned the administration's opacity, and asked why self-proclaimed anti-elite warriors suddenly had nothing to say. That episode wasn't an anomaly. Kelly has also openly mocked House Republicans for their dysfunction and inability to govern, criticized Fox News for what she suggested was cowardly post-election coverage, She questioned Ron DeSantis' political instincts, pushed back on conservative COVID minimizers who downplayed early risks, and gone after right-wing influencers who hyped bogus pandemic narratives. Her core audience may not always agree, but Kelly's willingness to lob grenades inward, even when it costs her applause, is part of what makes her feel authentic to listeners who don't want straight propaganda. It is a reminder that Kelly doesn't always play for Team Red, at least in the eyes of many on the side's most ardent true believers. Like all successful broadcasters, she plays for herself, her audience, and her version of what she deems to be true. She does traffic in rumor and unconfirmed reporting, of which I have been critical, but she's also willing to call bullshit even if it's occasionally on her listeners' team. And they know she'll entertain unproven claims, then interrogate them. That's part of the deal. And it's entertaining. Irresponsibly so? Sometimes, sure. But that's as sure a sign of the current media times as any. The irony, of course, is that she started as one of Trump's most visible skeptics. Her 2015 debate clash with the then candidate, in which she pointedly asked about his treatment of women, launched a public feud that helped define early Trumpism. Yet in 2024, she appeared at a Trump campaign event, praised him warmly, and now regularly defends him on air. That shift looks cynical, but it's likely something more strategic, a sign that both she and Trump have come to understand their mutual value. She gets renewed relevance and insider access. He gets validation from a former adversary who now signals mainstreaming within the conservative elite circles. And it goes on like this. It's really good. And it basically makes the case that she's the new Rush Limbaugh. And I think that's a really persuasive case. So Megyn Kelly, I think of all the major MAGA influencers, I think she and Patrick Bet-David are the most interesting in that they will both be willing to occasionally criticize Trump. And in this case, you have Megyn Kelly publicly begging Trump not to make a spectacular political mistake, which he may very well do. But in her persuasion, she gives the game away. She tells on Trump and she ultimately tells on herself. Her recognition that Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about women, and she knows he doesn't give a fuck about women, even though she does, and she's willing to subordinate that to a higher conservative purpose. And that's just shameless cynicism in and of itself. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.